what exactly do you need to be collecting? You need to collect information on everything that happens to your animals. We've already said the 3 main bullet points: intake, while they're in your care, and outcomes. So we're going to look at, why is this giving me notifications? Okay, skip that. Okay, so here's intakes. So this is everything that you need. You want to make sure you have paperwork to capture everything. Forms are really easy to prevent your staff from making mistakes. If you have a form they can fill out, then they can't possibly forget to ask, when was the last dose of heartworm prevention given? Or what veterinarian do you use, so we can contact them for records, right? But if you don't have forms for staff to be filling out, they're gonna be missing things. And we're gonna look at actually what paperwork. We'll look at examples of paperwork. But this is kind of everything that you need. You want intake medical, whatever happened to them previously, you need to know that. You want, or previous medical and intake medical, what happens as they walk in the door and previously. Behavior info from that owner, or even if it's a stray and they've only had it for a couple hours, they might have some nice behavior info for you. A picture, even if it's terrible, any picture in your computer system is better than no picture. If you've got a dog and you're suddenly like, is this dog who I think it is? If you have even a junky picture in your computer system, you can compare it and be like, oh yeah, okay, that is that dog. Or no, we've got dogs mixed up. That dog looks nothing like that picture, right? So even if it's not a good picture, don't put that bad picture online, but any picture is better than no picture. As soon as they walk in the door, get it on the computer, you're gonna be in good shape. Location it's going to. I see this mistake a lot. An animal walks in the door, great, we've got all this information about it, but where is it physically going in that moment? Is it going to a foster home immediately? You need to make sure your data team knows that, right, and what foster it went to so it can be tracked in the computer system. Or is it going to this cage or to this, sick ward or wherever it's going? You need to be tracking that on your intake paperwork so the data team knows. Where it came from, of course, you want to know where did it come from. Intake reason, like I said, this is really helpful for grants. If you can have even a layperson's reason, they might not be able to say what's wrong with that dog, but they might be able to say this dog is here because it's sick. That's why the person's surrendering it, or that's why the shelter was going to euthanize it and we pulled it. Have a way to track, why is it here? Was the shelter euthanizing it for behavior, because it's too young, whatever. And then that way, when you're writing a grant, you can say, hey, we saved 1,000 kittens they were going to kill because they were too young. Hey, give me some money for kittens, right? And then returns, you need to have a return process, including the reasons why they're returning. Animal you adopt out and then they return it back to you. You want to know why people are returning so that you can just run reports on that occasionally and see why the main reasons why people are returning animals. So this is an awesome way to track all this beautiful intake information without you lifting a finger. So this is an animal that was pulled from San Antonio's shelter and put into San Antonio Pets Alive. And instead of filling out a form, an intake form with all this information, we just send a copy of the kennel card to the data team and let the data team grab all the information they need off of the kennel card. So don't make more work for your staff if they don't have to. If you get a kennel card from a shelter, that's a great way to get the information. Or if you've got an owner surrender form, make the owner fill out breed and color and sex and blah, 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 and then fix it, because they're probably going to get the breed or whatever wrong. And then just send that, and then let your staff just use that to do the intake. Don't make yourself fill out a separate intake form or something if you don't need it. I love kennel cards from other shelters because they literally have everything. And if you can, have your staff capture that picture. One thing they can do, so if all of this is getting emailed to your staff, they can do a screenshot of the scanned-in kennel card and then save the little picture on a screenshot, and then upload that into the computer. It's black and white. It's not that great, but it's better than no picture, right? This is Awesome Pets Alive's medical intake form for cats. So this is what the vet clinic fills out, and they have made it so foolproof by having it just fill in the blank. You literally can't forget or make a mistake. I mean, their physical exam session that their technicians fill out literally is, mucous membranes blank. So you just write one letter to fill that, to answer that question. CRT blank, one letter to fill that question out. It just makes it so easy. The easier your forms are to fill out, the better off you're gonna be. It's so quick to just go in and circle things. Your little tests, they can circle positive or negative. We even made it where they have to circle not needed versus needed so that the staff has to look at each line item, so they can't just glance at it and only circle the things it needs. They actually have to circle not needed, so you know they checked on previous vet records or whatever to see if the animal needs it. It makes it really nice. So when you're making your forms, just keep that kind of stuff in mind. Make it circles or one word they have to fill out. Make it as easy as humanly possible for them. This is our owner surrender form. I just wanted to point out, and your return form, by the way, can be the same thing as your owner surrender form. You don't need separate forms for that. Make sure you've got your little legalese at the bottom. Make sure a lawyer has checked it. Something that surrenders ownership of the animal. They have no rights to the animal anymore. You know, we can't guarantee what we're going to do with the animal. Just make sure you have some kind of legal statement in there to keep you safe, because everybody will experience somebody trying to come back and get their animal back. That will happen to you. So you just have to say, sorry, I can pull this up and show you surrendered. Okay, so then location. So after intake, where is it going? If they're going into foster, I love having a foster sign-out sheet for fosters to sign. What we usually do is just have, the animal's information, any specifics about the animal, if it's a young kitten, what is it eating, that kind of thing. And then bullet points just to remind them of the most important information. This is who you contact with questions. This is where you go for medical. This is who you send your marketing materials to. And then it's, maybe a little paragraph that says something about, like, I promise I won't just give this animal away to my friend, or whatever problems you deal with. You can put it on that form, have them sign it, make a copy, send it with them. You put a copy of that in your end of day report. So now your data team knows this animal went to this foster home, so they can put that in the computer system. And you have that copy in case that foster says, you never told me I had to come back for vaccines. Actually, it was on your foster sign-out sheet. We went over it with you that you had to come back for vaccines. So again, just kind of helps you out. Foster transfers, you may have like an online form. We have an online form that a foster can go in and fill out. Hey, I want to transfer my animal to another approved foster. Just be thinking about little details like that. Foster return on-site. If you have fosters that are bringing animals back kind of against your will, you don't really want them to be kind of dumping them back, but they have to for whatever reason. Maybe have a form to capture why is that happening if it's happening a lot. Maybe it's that your staff isn't going over things properly when they're checking the animals out, and so you're getting frustrated fosters. Maybe you need to change that system. So if you want to have like a return form, you can also capture good behavior information on a foster return form. On-site locations, you want to be tracking like if they're going to PetSmart, adoption center, medical wards, neonatal wards, where are they moving within the wards? Our neonatal wards, we have 4 rooms within the wards, and so we actually track what room they're physically in. And then other places, think about boarding facilities and emergency clinics. How are you going to track that? You want to have some kind of system in place. Oh, here we go. Here's census. Yay, I knew I had it in here somewhere. So we lose animals. Everybody loses animals. It's easy to do. If you have thousands of animals moving around, in the summer, we'll have 1,500 animals in our system at a time. If you've got 900 cats in foster care, how are you keeping track of that? Or if you have a full nursery, how are you keeping track? Animals get stolen. We all know this. They get stolen out of cages. They get stolen by foster homes. Animals go missing because they escape from their cage or their foster home. And then sometimes paperwork doesn't get entered, and so animals get lost in that way. So make your team leaders responsible for making sure their location is accurate in the computer. I can't stress that enough. The vet clinic manager is responsible for making sure all the hospitalized animals that are physically in her clinic match the computer. And if they don't, it's her responsibility for why is that the case. It's not like that's the data team's problem and I don't have to deal with that. No, you have to be involved in that because the data team isn't there in your vet clinic. They don't know what's happening. They can't see those animals moving back and forth, so your managers need to be in charge of that. Your data team is there to double check and make sure that the locations are staying up to date, and then your daily census. Yay, I'm so glad this is in here. So this is the report PetPoint gives you. So let's say I'm working at SAPET, or I'm working at Petco right there. So I just run my little cute report for SAPET Petco. I can see my 14 animals, Waffles and Jason, all these cute animals. And then I can hand that to a volunteer, hand that to a kennel cleaner, whatever. They go through, mark them off, and then I let the data team know if there's problems. This is a lowtech, again, a non-computer version. If you just want to write it with your hands and take a picture and send it to the data team, it's a lowtech option for your census. Basically, you just write down animals that are at your location, but the computer doesn't say they are. So I've got Muffin in a cage here, but there's no Muffin in my location in the computer system. something happened. For some reason, Muffin didn't get moved to my location in the computer system. I need to tell the staff that. Maybe it never got intake to begin with. Like maybe that intake kennel card got lost, something like that. And then they can catch it right away and fix it right away if you're doing this daily. And then not physically at your location. Like I said, it got adopted, the contract got lost. If you're not checking that every day, you're not going to catch those problems. If you're doing an email EOD, you can just have your census on your EOD. It makes life super easy. You just put this at the bottom of your EOD, any kind of problems, and they just put, look, Maya was adopted. And so then the data team knows, oh my goodness, I need to find Maya's adoption contract. Why didn't that get in the computer system? So that's the better option. Again, I'd recommend this option if you can. Okay, so medical. There's a lot of medical data. Medical is, again, one of the things you have to be the most careful with because people's licenses are on the line if you mess up. Medical data logs, I'll show you an example of that, is a really low-tech, easy option for tracking a lot of medical. Instead of having a separate piece of paper for every single animal, you just have like a Excel spreadsheet that they can write a bunch of animals. If everybody's just all getting a parvo shot, you can write in really quick 10 animals that got a parvo shot. Some kind of illness injury form, and we'll look at that again. You want it to be fill in the blank, circle things, super easy. People can't mess it up. Medical request forms, we'll look at that. Rabies certificates, this is a big one that people mess up all the time is rabies certificates. If you guys are giving rabies vaccines, obviously you have to have a vet there. There is legally required stuff that has to be on those rabies certificates, and those printout ones you get from Pfizer, those books you get that are like in triplicate, you fill out, those aren't always accurate to what your state requires on your vet certificate. So just Google it. What needs to be on my rabies certificate? And you'll find it in 2 seconds. There's laws regarding, do you have to include the weight? Does it have to be the specific weight, or can you just write greater than 50 pounds? It's ridiculous, but there's laws regarding that. And then also, what do you do with those rabies certificates? Can you just scan it and keep it online, or do you have to keep the physical paper? That varies from state to state as well. Thankfully, Texas, if you have it on the computer, you don't have to have a physical copy. Thank goodness. And then parvo ward forms, that's nursery forms, any kind of medical forms you've got. And then make sure your medical team is making their own end-of-day report. They might be like, I don't want to make an end-of-day report because I'm medical and I don't have anything to do with paperwork, but they do. This is an example of our medical data log. Super low tech. They didn't even fill this out properly, but it's fine. They've just got A numbers over here and what got done with them. So rabies vaccines, distemper parvo vaccines, flea meds, dewormers, whatever. This is such an easy way for your adoption counselors to track their medical. They should, and actually this is kind of old. Nowadays they actually put those stickers on there for vaccines too. You should really take the sticker off the vial and have that scanned in. It helps make it more official that you actually gave that vaccine, so people don't question if you're really giving your vaccines or not. But anyway, so this is a low-tech, easy thing you can do. Take a picture of it, send it in. This is kind of a fancier, this is like a wellness form for animals. So again, circles, is this a 2-week vaccine or a 1-year vaccine? All that kind of good stuff. It's really easy to just circles and fill things out. Makes life easy. This is the illness form, and again, even illness, which seems like way too general to have things that you circle, but no. All of this, look at this, GI, there's all these very specific questions, and then you don't have to worry about, did your counselor remember to tell you all of these things that are going on with the cat? They can just circle what's going on with the cat, and then you can just hand it to your vet tech or your vet, and they don't have to go find the adoption counselor and ask them, wait, what's going on with this cat? If that makes sense. So having detailed illness forms can make your life a lot easier. This is our medication request form. So we don't have them fill out a whole illness form. If they're just getting a refill of medication, they can just do a quick medication request form. Behavior, you're going to need to have detailed behavior notes. This is one that can get you in a lot of trouble if you've got a dog bit someone, but you don't have proper documentation of that bite somewhere, and then you adopt it out and it bites somebody's kid, you're going to be in trouble. So you want to make sure that your behavior documentation is really good. Have some kind of behavior incident or bite report, like for human bites or dog bites. It can just be like a bite incident report that staff fills out if somebody gets bit, that gets scanned in and goes into the animal's records so that you have a record of that. Prior behavior is so important. People want to know, did this live with kids ever before? That kind of thing, so make sure you've got some kind of form for that. And that can just be on your owner surrender form. And then in-house behavior evaluations, if you want to have some kind of, just like the vet clinic forms where they just circle yes, no, is it good with this, whatever, an in-house behavior evaluation form can make your life easier. And make sure all that's getting uploaded. Again, just added to your end of day report and scanned in with everything else. And it might not even, some of this might not make it into your data system. Like your data system might not track prior behavior, and that's not the end of the world, but if you at least have it scanned in an end of day report where somebody can be like, oh, I don't know if Muffin is good with kids, but let me go grab that real quick. Let me look in the computer system and pull that owner surrender form up. Oh yeah, it did live with 3 kids, great. So even if it's not in your data system, you still want to have access to it. Of course, marketing materials, you're going to want photos, videos, biography. This is the biggest area that volunteers can help you with. One cool thing we do is at San Antonio Pets Alive, our fosters can actually go onto our website to upload marketing materials themselves. It doesn't go directly into our data system. We have volunteers who do that, but it at least just emails us pictures, bio, videos, whatever the fosters are doing at home, and they fill out a form online, an online template, and send it in, and then that way it can get into the computer system. So that makes our lives a lot easier, because sometimes getting fosters to give you their pictures can be hard. Okay, so outcomes. So one thing that's important with your computer system is that you keep in mind that you're the owner of that animal. Even if it's in foster care, you're still the owner of that animal, right? You still legally own that animal. Even when it's in foster care, you're still legally responsible for it. You still provide it with medications, behavior, whatever. And so once it is adopted to someone else or transferred to another rescue organization, then they become the legal owners. You're no longer the legal owners. And so that's kind of what I mean by outcome. I don't mean going to a foster or going to a vet to get a surgery done and then coming back to you. That's not really an outcome, right? Because you still own it. An outcome is when you're no longer the owner of the animal. So that's when the record is kind of complete, the animal's released. But you don't want to have a computer system that loses these animals, deletes them or whatever. I've seen people who use like Excel spreadsheets to track all their animals, and then they just delete them as they get adopted or as they get transferred out. But what if that animal gets returned to you? Or what if that owner calls and says like, hey, I can't remember when you said I need to get another parvo shot. Well, if you've deleted it off of your Excel spreadsheet, you're not going to be able to answer that question. So you want to have a computer system that can keep track of things for years to come. PetPoint just keeps things forever. There's no like limit, so that's one thing I like about PetPoint. So you've got lots of different outcomes that can happen. When you have a transfer to another rescue, I would definitely recommend having a form that they fill out, that they sign when they take that animal. If you've got a dachshund and you give it to Dachshund Rescue, you want them signing something saying they accept ownership of it. And also, this might sound weird, but you want to track that they actually agreed to take that animal, because then you might contact Dachshund Rescue later and say, hey, did you ever get that dog neutered? I need to update my system. And they might be like, we never took that dog from you. And then you pull out your form and you're like, well, Jessica came and got this dog on this date. And they say, oh my gosh, okay, I didn't even know Jessica came and got a dog under our name. That kind of stuff can happen. So having a form that they filled out can help you track things. You'll see that a lot. Have a form that people sign so that you're covered. And then return to owners. If you do any return to owners, have owner reclaims, have a form for them too to fill out. Of course, your adoptions, yay. This is our favorite one. We have an adoption contract and a separate adoption application. If you go to any of the adoption talks, they'll talk more about their paperwork, but the application is like, am I even acceptable to adopt an animal? So they fill that big long thing out. And then the adoption contract itself, of course, is really important. We have that be a one-page adoption contract with lots of legalese on it. An adoption checklist, which I believe I have an example. Yes, adoption checklist. I love an adoption checklist. This is for your adoption counselor to go over with your adopter, and they initial as the adoption counselor goes over all of it. So that way you can't have an adopter saying, no one told me my cat needs more booster shots. You said it had all of its shots. Well, we actually did talk to you about it. You initialed that you were talking to about it. But also, you don't want your adoption counselors forgetting to tell people things. And so this can help prevent your adoption counselors from forgetting anything. Yes, I'm going to go back. I just wanted to show you a copy of the adoption contract. So this is just a nice little checklist that your adoption counselors can go over with people. Okay, so that's an adoption checklist. Ringworm, mange, and disease disclosures. If you're adopting out anything contagious, which please do, adopt these animals out. You don't have to keep them in your shelter the whole time they're going through ringworm treatment until they're over. We adopt them out all the time. It's fine. You just need to have a legal piece of paper that says, I know ringworm's contagious. I don't have any people in my home that are immune compromised. I know how to treat ringworm. I'm getting medication for it. I know how to keep them in my bathroom so they don't get ringworm all over my house, whatever. Same thing with mange, any kind of disease, and even if it's not contagious, if you've got like a heartworm positive dog that you're adopting out, you want them to sign a form that says, I know I need to get him treated. I know I need to keep him calm. I know I need to do X, Y, Z. So having some kind of signed disclosure about whatever diseases, leukemia cats, FIV cats, all these are great to adopt out, but just make sure you've got a legal disclosure that you include in your end of day report. Behavior and illness handouts, the same thing. If you've got a cat or a dog that you know is terrible with cats, might be a good idea to have them sign that. And we actually, if it's something really simple like that, a dog that shouldn't be with cats, we put that on our adoption contract. There's a little blank that says behavior that I was told about today, and a blank, and then the adoption counselor can fill out dog is bad with cats, and then they can initial it on their adoption contract. So if it's something really simple like that, you can just put that on your adoption contract. But if it's something more detailed, heartworm positive or something, have a separate handout for it. Tracking foster home adoptions. This is really hard. You'll have fosters who will give away animals and be like, well, I found it a home. What's the problem? And you're like, did you get an adoption contract? Did you get an adoption fee? Did you do anything? And they're like, no, I just gave it to my cousin and I don't know. That'll happen. So have a system in place for tracking this. One thing you can do, and this is a little contentious, but what we've found works best is don't let fosters do adoptions at home. Require them to come to an on-site location to process an adoption. So we'll say, hey, why don't you just do your meet and greet? You got to meet these people. You don't want to meet them in your house, somebody you found, somebody who's contacted you through the internet. You don't want them coming to your house to meet this dog. That's a little weird. So you tell them, why don't you meet them at our PetSmart? We're doing an adoption event. Bring your foster, bring the adopter. They can meet them. If they fall in love, then your adoption counselor can do all your paperwork, handle the money, and it prevents the fosters from making mistakes. Because even if you let the fosters do paperwork and they kind of understand it, they're not going to be as well trained as your adoption counselors are, I would assume, at doing applications and stuff, going over applications. So just have a rule. Sorry, fosters, bring them on site. And you can make it nice for fosters. Fosters don't want to deal with 10 pages of an application and then they reject someone. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? And so if you just have them come on site, let the adoption counselors handle all of that, handle the money, handle the paperwork, it can make your life easier. Yeah, of course.
So if you're mainly foster-based and you have an adoption event every 2 weeks, we find that when we try to schedule it so that someone's there, the adoption either doesn't happen.
Yes. Okay, so her question is they're almost completely foster-based and they only have events every couple of weeks. What you might want to do is, and we do actually have this even with our system, we'll have a few fosters that are, you always have your superstar fosters, right? Give them special training. Say, hey, we're going to have a training session. It's going to take an hour. Come on over. We're going to do a good training session and train them exactly the same way you would an adoption counselor. And then make them like a certified adoption counselor. And then have your little list of maybe 5 or 10 or whatever certified foster counselors or something. And then give all your fosters their information and say, hey, if you can't come to one of our adoption events, I get that, you can't come on site, contact so-and-so and they'll meet you at a PetSmart. PetSmarts are awesome about you doing adoptions. Even if you're not having an event, they don't care if you come on their property and do an adoption, and it's a great, safe place to do an adoption. Petco's, the park, whatever. Go wherever you can that's safe. But yeah, have a few fosters. And you can do that even if you have brick and mortar. We have those fosters who are like, no, I do 50 adoptions a year and I'm not coming on site. Fine, you can become a trained whatever, give them a title, make them feel special, and give them good training just like you would your adoption counselor so you don't have problems. And make sure they know how to upload that paperwork to your data system. That's the number one thing we find is fosters don't get the paperwork to us. They do this adoption and they say, oh, I'm going to mail that contract in. Oh, sorry, it's still in my car. I haven't had a chance. And so it's just sitting in your system. Looks like you own it, but you don't own it. So have a system for them to, well, just take a picture of the contract and text it to the data manager and they'll get it updated in the system. But yeah, that's a good question. That, yeah, make some good ones. Okay, so this is the ringworm adoption waiver we use. It's pretty hardcore. I mean, it's I think it's pretty strongly worded. Like, I understand that we strongly recommend households with children, elderly, or immune compromised do not adopt a cat with ringworm since it's contagious to those people. Like, that's a pretty strongly worded ringworm agreement, and people still adopt ringworm cats all the time. So don't be afraid that, like, well, if I tell them the truth, they're going to be scared away from adopting a ringworm cat. It's not true. People will still do it, and you can still be safe legally if you have this kind of paperwork. And I think copies of a lot of this paperwork are in that booklet that you can get. But if anybody wants a copy of like our ringworm disclosure or something, just email me and I'll get you a copy of it. Okay, so this is another type of outcome, of course. These happen. You're going to have animals that are going to die in your care. You're going to have animals that have to be euthanized because they're terminally sick or they're just too dangerous behaviorally. And so you need to be able to track those, of course. We always track the reason something died, especially the reason something got euthanized, because people sometimes will say, well, you said you're no kill, but you're euthanizing animals. You want to be able to pull it up real quick and say, yeah, we euthanized 5 kittens last month because they were terminally ill and suffering and it was horrible or whatever. So you want to be able to track the reasons. And you want to track the reasons why things are dying, even if they're dying naturally, because for instance, we track like parvo deaths, and so then we can say we took in 100 dogs into the parvo ward last month. We had 10 die. We have a 90% survival rate in our parvo ward. That's amazing, right? Or you can say survival was way down this month. What happened? Well, we didn't have enough volunteers. Okay, what can we do to get you more volunteers? That kind of thing. So track the reasons why things are dying and being euthanized. Make sure you have the actual date recorded. That sounds a little weird, but sometimes you'll have a foster that'll come in and be like, hey, I only have this one kitten. And you're like, well, I show you have 5 kittens. Oh yeah, 4 of those kittens didn't make it. Don't enter them all on that day, because when you run your reports, it's gonna look like you had a bunch of deaths that day. Enter it in the computer system the actual day. Well, this one happened 3 weeks ago, and that one happened 2 weeks ago, and this one happened last week, that kind of thing. So enter the actual date. Yeah, and then run your reports on these regularly. Have your teams run their own reports on how they're doing. The neonatal nursery, anywhere where you're probably going to be having a higher than usual amount of deceased animals, neonatal wards and parvo wards. Transfer to rescue, like I said, have a transfer to rescue form. I really recommend that. Lost or stolen, have a system in place for managing this. A lot of groups don't, and we have actually been bad about that in the past. Because nobody really wants to think about it, and it happens really rarely, but you're going to have animals that escape from a foster home and never return, a dog that runs away. You're going to have them escape from cages and run away. This is going to happen. They're going to get lost in your system, like, we don't know what happened with this dog. I think he got adopted. We never found an adoption contract for it. We don't know. We really just don't know. That's going to happen. It happens in all big shelters if you're big enough. So have a system. What do? We count them as missing in care. That's what we count them as in our system. And we have an administrative function where you can outcome the animal. We don't own it anymore, but we don't know what happened to it. So have something in place for that. And then stolen, of course, if animals get stolen. One thing I'll say, too, is that fosters, of course, they can be one of the harder things to keep track of. And you'll have a foster who will take a litter of puppies and then just disappear with that litter of puppies, and you'll never hear from them again. That happens, and you call them and they hang up on you, and it's really frustrating. It makes you super mad. This happens to everybody. So have a system for dealing with that. I don't recommend going to their house and trying to get those animals because it is dangerous to do that. And I've heard of situations, especially in Texas, where you go to somebody's door and you bang on their door and it doesn't turn out super great. So don't try to go take animals back from people, but have something in your computer system where you can, of course, track it, make notes. Called so-and-so, they hung up on me, called them again the next day, and they cussed me out, you know, whatever you tried to do. Sent them a letter, a legal letter. We have a lawyer who types really fancy-looking legal letters and sends it to them on legal stationery with a certified mail. Hey, these are our kittens, and you took them. Here's a copy of your foster's sign-out sheet that said you know that these are our kittens and you have to give them back. And sometimes that scares people into kind of getting back into the system. But anyway, if they completely steal the animals, you need to have a way of tracking that the animals got stolen and outcoming them out of your system so that in 2 years, you're not still legally responsible for that animal. If something happens with it, you can say, no, I outcomed it. That foster stole them from us 2 years ago. We try to minimize those. Sometimes staff will kind of want to, I can't get these cats back. This foster is, driving me nuts. I can't get them back. Just outcome them as stolen. but they don't count as part of your live release rate. So even though they're alive and they went to, they're at a foster's home and they're alive, they're not going to count towards your live release rate. So try to avoid outcoming them as stolen unless you've exhausted all avenues. Sometimes we'll just say, look, you can keep them for free if you want to adopt them and you're not willing to pay the adoption fee. Fine, you can just keep them. Just sign online, email them the adoption contract. Just fill out the adoption contract so I can outcome them as adopted instead of having to outcome them as stolen, if that makes sense. Even if they technically didn't pay for it, so they're stealing it, at least it's alive, it's a live outcome. You don't want to outcome them as stolen if you can avoid it.